Very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the plenary session 1. Let me first invite all our panelists, our esteemed panelists, onto the stage area, and I'll do a brief introduction of all the panelists. Mr. Jonathan Goldner, Mr. Mansoor Haque, the only female panelist, Ms. Dashma Kanwaratne, Mr. Bindu Ranasinghe, and Mr. Ananda Premachandra. We are very fortunate to be here today with this esteemed panel to deliberate on our subject, global and regional trends, emerging trends in ports, terminals, and shipping. We have 90 minutes ahead of us, and I'm so excited to be here with this esteemed panel. So let me briefly introduce the panel. Mr. Jonathan Goldner. John has been with Maersk Group for over 27 years. And he's the Chief Executive Officer of AP Moller Terminals for basically Middle East and the Asia regions. And out of his, if you take his career, more than 2/3 of his career is basically, he has spent overseas, spending time across Europe and Asia. I need to also mention this, he has a passion for golf, and he spends his time, his leisure time is taken by his 3 children and the volunteer work for his local church. Mr. Mansoor Haque is, I need to call him Dr. Mansoor Haque. He's the executive chairman of Interport BD, which is a UK-based infrastructure specialized consulting company. He has many decades of experience in the trade. Most interestingly, Mansoor, 3 decades ago, has practiced as a pathologist. So he's also a medical doctor. I'm sorry. But I need to tell all of you, all pathology-related questions, you need to save it for the networking session, please. And we have Dashma Kanwaratne, Chief Commercial Officer for Colombo West International Terminal, CWIT. And she comes with a wealth of experience from both the port side and the land side supply chain, serving for multiple diverse stakeholders. And she's one of the very few female management team members in the Port of Colombo. So apart from her professional achievements, she's very committed to all the social area where she's feeding and educating more than 9,000 underprivileged children through her church, Center of Hope, which is lovely. And next is Bindu Ranasinghe. I think all of you know Bindu. He's the Deputy General Manager for Hambantota International Port Group. Bindu comes with more than nearly 3 decades of experience in liner, non-liner, and ports, commercial and operations exposure internationally and locally. And Bindu spends his leisure time traveling with her family. Last but not least, Ananda Premachandra doesn't need any introduction, but I will put it this way. Prem is an expert in ports and terminal sector with excellent exposure and experience from various overseas assignments. He's a nature lover at heart, and with his extensive work travel, the traveling has become his main hobby now. I think he arrived this early morning today. All right. So with that, we will commence our session. We will start with a brief presentation by John, followed by the panel discussion. So to kickstart, let me invite John to make his presentation.
All right, good afternoon. How's everybody? Good. No, but look, pleasure to be here. And if you could pull up the presentation, please, whoever's got that. We'll go without the slides, and I'll just start. So here, nope, pump fake. Okay. So who are we? So a little bit about Maersk and APM Terminals. So APM Terminals is part of the Maersk Group. We've got over 64 terminals around the world. We're the biggest operator of transshipment ports in the world, and also pleased to say that in the World Bank report, which ranks the efficiency of ports, 6 out of the top 10 ports are actually affiliated with APM Terminals. We've got a long presence in South Asia, but I think what we're really trying to do is look for ways to grow, and we'll talk a little bit about what we see as the opportunities here in the region over the coming minutes. Yeah, if you go to the next slide. Keep going, another slide. Yeah. Keep going. All right. Keep one more. Thank you. Very helpful. So what am I going to talk about today? I think we stand at a critical juncture in maritime logistics, and I think in the coming years we'll no doubt see a reshaping of the port operations and also trade. Yeah. This is the wrong presentation, guys. So I'm just gonna forget it. I'm just going to go with the speech here. So we stand at a critical juncture in maritime logistics. In the coming years, will no doubt reshape port operations and trade. We have tremendous potential to grow here in South Asia, and no doubt the region will continue to contribute to the global economy. So let me spend a few minutes talking about the trends in this region, the opportunities I see, and likewise some of the challenges. Finally, a little bit about what APM Terminals is doing here in the region. Before that, let's just speak a minute about what makes South Asia so unique, and there's some really, really good things. So first of all, 23% of the global population is based here. We have GDP outpacing the global average by about 3%. We have container throughput growing by about 8%. And likewise, we have multiple countries in the region placed on the critical east-west trade route. So what then are the growth demand drivers that are behind this? And I think it's really 4. So the first is around manufacturing shifts. Here, we'll continue to see, no doubt, the China Plus strategy, even though China still has 38% of global exports, a staggering figure. I'm sure we'll continue to see that adjust over time. We see India making several initiatives, such as the production-linked incentive programs to help attract manufacturing, notably in electronics. We see Bangladesh making great strides in the garment industry and looking to also diversify across other retail and lifestyle products. And of course, finally, we have Sri Lanka and Colombo, who are preeminent transshipment ports and also striving to become a high-value manufacturing hub. I think the next thing that is really going to make a change is the demographic dividend we see here in the region. So we have an increasingly young population and likewise a rising middle class. Here that will help drive change, consumption, and is also no doubt supplying great talent to a number of countries and organizations around the world. We see huge growth in e-commerce. India will hit over $300 billion by 2030. In other countries, we see growing at around 40 to 50% annually. Likewise, an increased demand for fresh and frozen products will create the need for more fulfillment centers close to ports, flawless first and last mile delivery, and also cold store facilities. The next is infrastructure. So here, all countries in the region certainly investing heavily in infrastructure, and I have no doubt that will continue. We have India driving things with the Gati Shakti and Sagarmala program. We see very exciting developments in Bangladesh along the river. And likewise, of course, we see Sri Lanka with its Port City project here in Colombo and the exciting additions of both WCT and ECT to the port. Finally, let's touch on digital transformation. And here, I think what's exciting is really the speed and pace that this region and economy is adopting the technology. We see huge progress in UPI and digital payments in India. We see multiple port authorities making strides to implement port community systems to reduce dwell times, improve visibility, and improve resilience in the ports that they're implemented in. So let's just take a few seconds and dive a bit deeper on the countries here. So if we start with India, no doubt an emerging maritime powerhouse. I think it's ripe for transformation. We're witnessing an unprecedented commitment from the government for infrastructure development and likewise economic modernization for both public and the private sector. Key strategic developments include the direct freight corridor, game-changing rail infrastructure which will dramatically reduce logistics costs and help enhance transportation efficiencies. We have the build-out of the ICDs along the corridor, which is helping connect the hinterland of India to the rest of the world. And of course, we have India's ambitious plans for multiple megaports over the coming decade. So I think as we look here, we believe it's important that there should be healthy competition across these infrastructure opportunities for all operators to play in. And we also think that there can be a good mix of both global and local players in the market to ensure we get FDI into the country, job creation, skills development, I'll say both ways across countries. And I'd say here is certainly a country that APM Terminals and Maersk would be honored to continue our current footprint and also grow. We then have Bangladesh, which I'll say is really a new maritime frontier. It's great to see the country navigating the political change in a good manner, and we're confident that it will continue its remarkable economic transformation in the years to come. GDP is averaging over 6 to 7%, and the country is rapidly expanding manufacturing sector, especially in the fast-growing retail segment. No doubt this will require improved port infrastructure, but also improved roads and logistics infrastructure across the country. Here I'm proud to say we're very excited with the platform agreement that Denmark and Bangladesh have signed for the new river port of Laudia, and look forward to working with the country to help develop the nation's leading port with the deepest draft to radically improve efficiency for the good of the country. Then, of course, we have Pakistan, which is also striving for its true potential. Here, we see containerized trade growing, and no doubt, new infrastructure will be required to meet the country's ambitions. Of course, this is also an interesting market given the gateway it provides to multiple landlocked countries across Central Asia. And again, we look forward to working with the country to figure out how we can play a part to help develop the infrastructure and improve efficiency for the good of the country. Finally, and certainly not least, we have Sri Lanka and Colombo. This port is really perfectly geographically positioned hub. Despite the plans for additional transshipment ports in the region, we're confident, and I'm confident, that Colombo will continue to maintain its competitiveness and also continue to grow. We certainly, at Maersk and APM Terminals, want to be a part of developing the next phases of the port with the government of Sri Lanka, including the upcoming modernization of the port. We believe there is real opportunity to improve efficiency in the port to make sure it maintains its competitive edge. We want to be a partner to the country for decades to come. So in conclusion, let me just show a few examples of how we believe we are working across the region to help improve life for all. I think South Asia is not just a market, it's really an ecosystem with immense potential. World-class ports will directly contribute to it and enable it. But I think it's important to remember that a port does not create demand in isolation. And likewise, supply chains won't be resilient without an efficient port. It takes the right people with skills, upright values, using the best assets and the best technology together in a combined way to make a port world-class. We don't just see ports here, we really see pathways to economic transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for that very interesting presentation given the short time period, and sorry for the technical issue. All right. So I'm going to pose a question to all our panel members, and we'll start we'll ask Prem to start. The mics are there, yes. So the maritime geographies are evolving. Is it working? All right. Maritime geographies are evolving, and there are multiple, both mainliners and the feeders are adopting various strategies as a result of various global factors. As an example, shipping lines are changing from more trade-wise, port-to-port, round-trip model to a more hub and spoke model. So with that in mind, do you see any other trends from shipping lines which are emerging? And as a result of these trends, do you see any impact to the ports and terminal readiness and the entire global trade landscape, maritime global trade landscape?
The question involves multiple sectors. We have to start talking about the time we had about 2.5 or 3 decades ago, when we had 2 or 3 main hub ports catering to the entire trade network in Asia region specifically, and significant ports for Hong Kong, Singapore in this region, and Colombo, ports like Colombo, Kaohsiung, Busan, Koh Phangan and so on played a secondary role to these main key hub ports. Then started the hub port competition. The countries that generated the gateway cargo started thinking about taking control of some of their destiny by getting into the hub port business. This results in Malaysia getting into hub port business in 2 locations. They create PTP, they create West Port of Malaysia with the right kind of facilities. And with this change, instead of one port taking control of a particular region or a key location with geographic advantage, multiple ports started appearing, a cluster of ports started appearing as a hub. So the first change that we saw was, instead of one hub port controlling a key location, 3 or 4 hub ports appeared, and they managed to create some kind of a harmony over the years in sharing the business. That happened in multiple locations, right? Not only in far Southeast Asia. It happened in Mediterranean. You see multiple hubs in Mediterranean now sharing the load, right? Hubs appeared in Spain. There was Malta, then, so many locations inside a particular key location started developing hub ports. So it became cluster of hubs in key locations. Now, you see this happening in Colombo. It's quite relevant because it's happening in South Asia as well. You saw the appearance of Cochin Port offering an international transshipment terminal. The latest addition being Vizhinjam in Kerala, South India. So this wave of changes continues. It started 2 decades ago, it continues. This is number one. Number two, the key change that happened in hub operation was the involvement of shipping lines, major shipping lines as partners, strategic partners in the business. Also because, like those countries that generated gateway traffic, lines too wanted to take control of their destiny to some extent. So this key change had to be understood by ports. Those who understood thrived. Those who failed to understand the importance of getting strategic partnerships in lagged behind. You see, Singapore learned a good lesson from CMA CGM shifting to Westport of Malaysia, Maersk shifting to PTP, Evergreen shifting to PTP, because PSA wanted to keep their virginity. They didn't like marriages. So ultimately the bitter lesson was learned. They started walking the same path. This happened in Europe. In Europe, lines took major control of. So these are the changes that I saw as very strategic and key changes that changed the destiny of the business and how it is managed.
Thank you very much, Prem. That's a very interesting perspective. Dashma, what are your thoughts on the same subject?
Yeah, so further to what Prem was saying, I would like to take a little a bird's eye view of everything. If you look at the region, we all know the statistics. India is propelling the region's growth at 8%, and the region is growing at 6%. And in that backdrop, what we notice is that the intra-regional trade has a lot of potential. So if you look at Europe, intra-regional trade, that means the trade, when you take the total trade, the regional trade that happens within the region is about 60%. If you look at Pacific, Asia, that part of Asia, it's about 50%. 60%, 50%. But in this region, in the South Asia region, intra-regional trade is a mere 10%. So there is great potential for intra-regional development in terms of trade. So while shipping lines, as John was also articulating, focuses on this region, I think it's important that we collaborate and as a region we drive this growth. And I think in the next questions I will further expand where I'm coming from. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Dashma. John, your perspective to the same question.
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, the great articulation of how ports have developed and how the trends created new competition. I think if I step back, I think from a overall perspective, I think transshipment hubs will become increasingly important for shipping lines. And we'll talk more about that in the next session. But when we move to hub and spoke models, these are absolutely critical for things to be working right. So I think if I think the things that are important for here, I would say stability and clarity in policy. I mean, when shipping lines make a decision, you know, to base their whole network on something like a Pelepas, that move, that's a big decision for a line, and we need to have stability there. I think it's important that, I mean, there's something around just where the port's located, right? And you know, it's got to be in the right place to reduce sailing time. Things have got to be super efficient, and maybe that's been a little bit lost over the last years, where I think everyone was grappling with COVID and trying to just make things work, right? But I think as we unfold here with all the new alliance changes, efficiency is going to be super important. So having a fast, reliable, resilient port that's also low cost will be important. And then I think also what I would say is I think good that somehow we need to look at that overall supply and demand. And I think, you know, infrastructure needs to be built in a way that it's there and ready to support the demand. But it makes not good decisions for anybody, whether a country or or from an investment standpoint, if we build infrastructure that, the demand's not there, I think that's just a waste of government funds, and likewise creates issue on the private side. So I think is good communication as there can be between the people using the port, the country, the people investing there. Hopefully together we can make good decisions about how to invest, because at the end of the day, it's really about making the country the winner. I mean, the country's the customer here, right? So how do we make the country the winner, the people the winner? And then, of course, also have something that's competitive for the shipping lines, as they could move the volume, to multiple ports, as you just articulated. Yep.
Thank you, John. Mansoor, do you want to add your perspective to the same discussion?
Thank you, Amal. It's interesting to hear all the different thoughts that have already come in. I would like to mention that I'm from Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is the world's largest delta. 3 of the world's largest rivers flow out through Bangladesh, bringing with them somewhere between 1 and 1.2 billion metric tons of silt, sand, and mud every year. What does this mean in practice? 1, everybody is going for bigger and bigger ships. We need bigger ships to keep our costs down, our freight costs down. John will say the same thing. But our maritime passages are all getting silted up, no matter how much you dredge. Then we come to infrastructure. What many people do not realize is that Bangladesh essentially has no bedrock. For instance, some may have heard of this bridge across the Jamuna River that was constructed, 6.2 kilometers. It's on floating piles. Each pile is 130 meters long, and it is still floating. It hasn't reached bedrock. Jonathan mentioned about connecting to the hinterland. How are we going to do it? Railway, one option, roads, another option. Both those need to be built up because it's a delta, it floods every year. And to give an example of difficulty of construction, my company was involved in construction of a flood protection embankment, about approximately 12 kilometers long. More than 5,000 penetration tests had to be done. They would roll and test, roll and test. So you can imagine what this does to the infrastructure cost. So I shall end over here, and then we can go ahead.
Thank you very much, I think, for sharing from a Bangladesh point of view. Bindu, you want to share your, please?
Thank you, Amal, and I leave with very few to talk when after I get the opportunity, after very knowledgeable for panelists. But what I think, if I take one area of your question, since it's more diverse, I think the region is entering into a very transformative phase at the moment, driven by the technological advancement and global, regional collaboration and sustainability. If you talk about the sustainability, how these things happening at the moment, like we are moving into, let's say, it's like the advanced technologies now shaping the terminal, I mean the future terminal operations, and of course for increasing the efficiency and reducing the cost. That is because we are entering into the automation, AI, these phases. So basically, when technology is taking over and it is shaping the future of the industry, of course, sustainability also into the discussion. And as a part of that, now we talk about what you call fossil-free fuel, and then accordingly we have to invest on electrical equipment or hybrid, or like I think there are examples in Colombo itself, and so then regional collaborations as well. Now, I mean, unlike those days, I think Mr. Prem nicely explained, I mean, the collaborations are more into action currently, let's say India, Bangladesh, or Pakistan, China, and Sri Lanka itself, Colombo, you can see how many players in Colombo and driven for the same goal, yet keeping the competitiveness. So that is what I see at the moment, Amal. So we are more into technological, I mean, more advanced technology era we are going into, and that urge the industry to give more facilities, and maybe like you see the vessels are getting bigger and the ports need to be with more facilities. So then we need more investments, and then of course that's now more, I mean, rather than earlier, I mean the previous, I mean like 2-3 decades before, now more the private sector is more into the ports investments. That is because of the investment cost and the knowledge. So that's why more PPP projects are coming into action. So those are, I see, like more trends and the new formation in the current context.
Right. Thank you, Bindu. I think, Prem, I think you very nicely explained how the hub ports developed, and then it started expanding, which is also now going to take a center stage with the hub and spoke model. They are going to be very important. I want to ask John, when you consider the current trends and competition from APMT's point of view, what are your plans or focus for the Indian subcontinent? I know you covered partially during your the presentation. That's question one. And clubbed with that, I want to also ask you, there are multiple hubs in this part of the world. So do you think these hubs in the future need to collaborate? If so, how?
Okay, so for for plans in the region, as I said during my speech, I mean we have certainly plans to grow here. I think our overall goal is to be a preferred partner to the governments that are our primary customers, and help make their supply chains more resilient. We think there are great opportunities given the growth in all the countries I just mentioned to do that. We have, we believe, a good way to do it. I mean, having the expertise as a port operator, but then having the blessing of a shipping line that you can bring to new developments, and then likewise, another blessing that we're in a great new cooperation, and Maersk is with Hapag-Lloyd. We're depending on some of these markets that's also a potential. So I think for us, it's really making sure we come up with the best solution for the country. And I mentioned that earlier. I mean, how do we deploy capital in the best way for the company, for the country, in a way that helps improve efficiency, reduce friction, and makes overall sense. And that'll look different in each place. So for us, having an open dialogue and trying to understand really what the drivers are, and how we can help meet them, I think, is how we want to do it, and find good partners along the way to help. So I hope when we look back here, 5 years from now, I hope we'll have some more good examples of how we've worked together to bring some of this to life. So, certainly want to grow.
Thank you very much. The second part of the question, John, there are multiple hubs in this part of the world. Do you think these hubs for future should collaborate together? If so, how?
Yeah, so I think my overall comment on collaboration, look, as I'll talk about in the next panel too, I think there's so much friction in the industry today. Everywhere you look, there's waste. I mean, everywhere there's waste, right? We have over, 4 billion pieces of paper, I understand, are in circulation on a daily basis to move global trade, right? I mean, that's crazy, right? So I think that for sure there's opportunity to collaborate. I can say the way we'll do it in APM terminals, the hub terminals that we will have and operate for Gemini, for sure we already have technology that we've developed. We have digital twins for each one of these hubs that we'll be using to basically simulate how the different vessels are arriving, leaving, how we can plan that in a way that shortens the connections, make sure, today maybe a box sits on a terminal for, let's say 4 to 7 days today. But we want to do that in a lot shorter time, right? And so we'll for sure be looking to do that. I think there are also opportunities to do that in some of the gateway ports. The more we can bring things together and get visibility in the supply chain, which is really hard to get today, the better we can plan. And the better you can plan, the more efficient you can be, the easier it is to solve problems. And again, then it's easier to make a port efficient for a country, which is the ultimate goal.
Thank you, John. May I ask Dashma, if you can add to it, how do you see it more from a Adani Ports point of view?
I represent
About
Colombo
collaboration.
West International
Yes.
Terminal, and one of the investors is Adani. So I think transshipment is critical, but it's also footloose. So here in Port of Colombo, we are focused on transshipment, and if you look at certain other regional players, it's a lot of domestic. So we are very proud of our growth. In the last 25 years, our compound annual growth rate is 15%. But in the last 5 years, it's only 1.3%. I think last month was very good. Port of Colombo did some good numbers. January was our best number for the whole, for the last, 25 years. But if we see the growth, it's 1.3% means compound annual growth rate. That means that exponential growth that we had over the 25 years, it's kind of plateauing. If we look at the deep draft capacity, we know that the utilization is high. Vessels are bunching up. Schedule integrity is challenged. And because we are not a very domestic heavy port, it's the first port that will probably, where there'll be a void sailing, etc., etc. So while we talk about transshipment, hub and spoke model, and certain shipping lines having their own feedering systems, I think we also need to be agile. Wherever we build capacity in Port of Colombo, in 3-4 years, after full operation, it always got filled. And we see that happening now. So capacity is imperative. But in addition to that, we also see a correlation between Port of Colombo's volumes with some supply chain disruption. Maybe the Suez Canal, or a flood in Chittagong, or some disruption in the Red Sea. And then you see a spike, and we are all very happy about it. But my view is that we need to take the discussion beyond transshipment, beyond a port that calls, that responds to a mayday or a distress vessel or some disruption in the supply chain. We have to be the optimum choice as a port. And for us to achieve that, then we need to have capacity, which is definitely in the pipeline. We also need to drive innovation. We need to drive creativity. And that comes not as a single terminal. So if you look at some of the deep draft terminals in the Port of Colombo, there's a network of terminals that's behind them. If you take Colombo West Terminal, Adani is has 15 terminals in India. So now as we speak, Mundra is having calls which are beyond the pro forma window. And we are saying, sorry, we can't handle 3,100 TUs if the pro forma window is 3,000. Now, where is this 100 TUs going? So that's where network is important. And that's how we can collaborate and bring that volume to other strategic hubs. So gone are the times when terminals on their own did fantastic, did very well. I think it's now about collaborating. And at CWIT, when the team, we have a very young team, our leadership is in the 40-year range. Of course, there are a few baby boomers who are giving us expert advice. As excellent representation of Gen Z. So when we talked to them, they were saying, we were having a brainstorming and talking about what our tagline should be. And they said, look, connecting the region, collaborating with all stakeholders, and contributing towards sustainable development. So I'm of the view that intra-regional trade must happen. For example, between India and Bangladesh, doing trade is 25% more expensive than doing trade with India and Germany. So that's the potential the region has. Yes, we have to secure the transshipment, but we need to also drive intra-regional trade. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashma, for that perspective. Very interesting. I want to ask Manzoor, when you take the Bangladeshi ports, when you take the competition and the increase in domestic demand, how do you see Bangladesh ports? It's on, right? It's on. Bangladesh ports developing, looking at infrastructure strategy to live up to the current competition and the increased demand in domestic demand from a both container and a bulk point of view.
Okay, it's
One is from the port side, what are the infrastructure developments, and then if you mentioned about the draft issues, the silting issues, and then with that, what's the strategy to cater to the demand?
You have mentioned something which is actually very dear to our hearts, that we must have a strategic plan to be able to cope with what we see coming. Now, we have some major international players who have signed MOUs mainly with Chittagong Port. And I'll mention that the Chittagong Port now has a draft allowance of only 10 meters. So, right? But the international companies that are coming in all seem to be box companies. APMT, John mentioned Laldia is there. Red Sea Gateway is already operating. They are into boxes. DP World, PSA, they have signed. Abu Dhabi Ports has signed an MOU for a joint development. The Japanese are also in the mix. They are the only ones who are also looking at dry bulk at Matarbari. But the basic issue still remains. Matarbari, and anybody who looks at a Google map will see that is already silting up. Because of all this silt, it has to go somewhere. And when the water remains still, it settles down. And that is it. Now, how Bangladesh and the international operators will address this issue, or are we going to remain limited to a 10-meter draft, is, I don't know, read tea leaves, tarot cards, you name it. I'm not quite sure how this is going to be addressed, and I don't think anybody is sure. For inland connectivity, the easiest way is to use the rivers, but those rivers are also sitting up. A few 100 million meter cubes of dredge have to be done. So, where do you go? I wish I was a pathologist, because only after the event can we tell that what went wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Manzoor, for your comments on that subject. Prem, with your extensive exposure and knowledge here and overseas, how do you assess Sri Lanka's readiness to be that hub in the hub and spoke model, if that these come up, and also or the mega hub for this ISE region? And what are the that's the first question, and then what are the other by way of policy, infrastructure, what are the things that needs to fall into place in Sri Lanka to be on top of that game?
I will try to answer without treading into P2, because I think P2 is going to look at these regional specific issues. But nevertheless, I would like to talk about this subject of dependence on strategic location. Up to now, it has been a strength. Beyond now, it is a weakness. Location can be strategic in terms of shipping only if that location is good enough to attract cargo. The most strategic location is the location that generates cargo for shipping lines. So our thinking that Colombo is strategically located, and therefore, if we improve our facilities, launch brand new terminals with good infrastructure, business would come. It's like thinking that, if you take if you go to any water pool and put your hook in and think that you are going to get a big fish over there. You may or you may not. So I think we have come to a point where we need to forget about strategic advantage, because other ports are appearing in the strategic location with least deviation. Most important factor is what the clients need today. The clients need control of their destiny. They are no longer willing to depend on somebody else to decide whether they would be successful in their business in a particular region or not. As I said before, lines are looking at strategic interest in ports and terminals. And specifically for Colombo now, in view of the fact that Colombo is launching something like a 6 million TEU capacity in the next 2 years, very, very expensive capacity, and competition also appearing in the region from our own partners, right? We have to be more strategic in terms of going into this business now. Our goods are already there. In our thinking terms, they are suitable for the buyers, but are they suitable for the buyers in their own measurements, right? This is the question. So we have a long walk to achieve that goal. Merely putting in infrastructure will not ensure that Colombo can be that mega hub. There are so many things that beyond putting in infrastructure that we need to do. Without taking too much, I will Just take one example of an item that is never addressed here in any forum, which is managing disasters. We want business, we want clean business, we want shipping lines to come in and give their good ships over here, handle their good containers, but we don't want their dirty containers. We don't want them to catch fire. We don't want them to bring ships that will catch fire and dirty our water. That is not the way to go into main hub business. You look at the large hub ports, they provide services not only to handle ships, not only to do bunkering, but also handle situations that the lines themselves cannot control. I think nobody wants to talk about it, but this is a big elephant in the room. While we put in infrastructure, we should think about getting ready to help when they are in distress. That is something I want to bring out in a public forum so that people would look at it afresh without looking at it as a necessary evil. Look at it as if, parents, the way the parents look at their babies. If you want to get married and have kids, you got to get ready to change their nappies. Okay? So if you want to say, no, I don't want babies who will require their nappies changed, that's not going to happen. So we have come to that point now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bindu, for also laying foundation for P2 with that comment. Before I open the panel to the audience, I want to ask Bindu a twofold question. One, how do you see the emerging trends in the RoRo sector? RoRo sector, especially with the global EV market development which is taking place, impacting this region, and also the specifically your area, the HIPG. So from a more regional and a local perspective, how do you see the emerging trends in RoRo?
Amal, it's like this. RoRo is it's not been discussed much in Sri Lanka. Actually, I think when we took over Hambantota, we were depending on our domestic cargo. So 50% of that total volume was domestic. So we lost that volume in 2020. And then our eyes were open how to survive. So then we realized what is happening in the RoRo. Actually, we have been studying since the inception, but that was the point we wanted to take a lead. So anyway, when it comes to RoRo, I think there are about 700, 800 vessels in RoRo, carrying vessels in the world, and with very handful of operators. But in 2020, with the pandemic, and within like 2.5 years, 150 ships went into scraps. So, but the demand did not drop as they anticipated. So that created a huge vacuum. And actually, other than the contracted customers, like let's say OEMs, maybe like Toyota or Tata or Honda or somebody, so others were not in a position to, ship their vehicles. So there was a situation like that. So under the situation, then like from 2023, all the lines started building, ordering the new vessels. And of course, when we talk about the trends, we definitely have to talk, as an Asian, we have to talk about China and India. So where they making they are producing a lot of vehicles. And for Hambantota, of course, India is the biggest market. And now the most of the vessels coming out are dual fuel, and most of the LNG and fossil fuel. So ports will also have to adopt, I mean, they need to bunker. So there are some challenges on that factor as well. If we talk about EV, of course, we know how the world is being caught by EV sector. I think 2019, they registered only 500,000 EVs across the world. I think last year it was like 2.4 million. So that is the, so that is the way it is happening. And whilst there were certain disturbances during the pandemic period, of course, in Europe, I think vehicle market dropped by 18% due to the pandemic reasons. And so at the initial stage, Germany was the main manufacturer, but now it has been shifted to China. We all know that. And India is also trying to be a EV manufacturing hub. So with the, but there is another reason, another fact, EV, when we talk about EV, so people are very reluctant to use EV as a second vehicle. That is one fact. The other one, we have not, across the globe, there is no proper second-hand market. So these are some of the issues, though it seems like EV is catching up everything. But of course, as port operators, we also have to be ready with a lot of facilities like, EV charging, and you can't tow a EV as a normal vehicle. You need to have more sophisticated DQ for them. We have to check a lot of things, whether they are, the battery levels are okay. Likewise, there are a lot of activities as the ports also have to do when it comes to EV. And as the trends that we can say, as the HIPG, as you asked in the region, in Sri Lanka, we are only doing currently Ro-Ro handling. What I can say, so we are, when we started handling in 2018, we were like amateurs. We didn't know much about Ro-Ro handling, but now we have come to a position that back-to-back 3 years, we were awarded by Mitsui Oil Alliance, MOL, for operating with 0 accidents. When it comes to vehicles, it's a very, very important fact. So I just wanted to add certain things related to our port as well, Amal, in this case. So I will conclude like this. Ro-Ro, especially when the freight rates for containers were high, Ro-Ro had a huge demand. And currently, the biggest issue with the Ro-Ro is the freight rates. And because the charter heights are extremely high. Anyway, amid all these things, the industry is growing, and EV sector is also the same. Especially India is growing in that sector, impacting Sri Lanka. So I think I have clarified sufficiently for you.
Sure. I'll ask the second part of the question. How do you envision collaboration with Colombo port in complementing container from HIPG?
Yeah, it's like this. We are, of course, we are bringing 4 more cranes, making 6 altogether. This week we are receiving with some RTGs. Of course, our opinion is that we need to have a cohesive brand strategy for container operations. We cannot work as isolation because that's how we can sustain, we can survive in this sector. I think during the first phase, Mr. Prem nicely explained how the collaboratively work, how we should work. So I think rather than talking about Colombo, we can talk about Sri Lanka. I think that is our opinion. I mean, we should brand our operations as Sri Lankan, Sri Lankan ports. So accordingly, we can reach, because each port, each terminal has their own skills, I mean, on characteristics which will attract more cargo. And that is our opinion. I think we can work together. Actually, we started containers in April due to the reason that Colombo was so congested with the impact of Red Sea scenario. So we somehow proudly say that we managed to retain at least 50,000-60,000 TEUs for Sri Lanka. Otherwise, if we had not operated, so this volume would have gone to some other regional competitor. And whenever we, as a transshipment location, whenever we expand our capacity, we have seen the volumes are coming. It is not, I'm just telling that it is coming, because if we consider 2020, compared to, let's say, 2020, if we compare, Amal, India and Bangladesh have grown, I mean, they have increased their TEU's capacity more than 8 times, whilst the entire world is have done it in 4 times. Right. So that is where the potential, I think. So Sri Lanka has, I mean, there's a huge potential. They are still generating. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, India's containerized cargo volume is about 10 to 12%. It can be further increased with the modern world. So then more containers will be produced, container volumes. So we can collectively work on this. And I will give you, before conclusion, I'll give you one example. Whenever a new player comes into the action, the most of the others get disturbed. You can remember I was in Sri Lanka Ports Authority as a trainee. At the time SAGT was started. At that time, I think Mr. Prem is the best person to tell it. So all the SLP employees were, and some of the stakeholders were so upset. So it was like SAGT is going to grab our volume or something. At that time, as I remember, we were doing about 1.8 or 2 million TEUs in JCT. But you see, SAGT came and CICT came, and more terminals are coming up. We have reached 7 million. JCT is doing 1.8 or 2 million, and SAGT also doing. So we are growing with the expansion of capacity, so no need to worry. I think we can collaboratively work and expand the capacities together and attract more volumes.
So collaboration, working together is the future. Yeah.
Definitely, that's what I think.
All right. So with that, let me open the panel to the audience. I think hotel staff will be ready with mics. Yeah.
Amal, from the host, can I ask a question? I want to direct this question to Mr. Premachandra. We're talking about the competition because the topic is about competition. We can't shy away from that. The region generates about 30 million plus TEUs, majority is from 2/3 nearly coming from India. But we see Colombo itself going up to 15 million TEUs, probably operationally even more by 2026. Then we've seen the Vizhinjam port coming just next door. It's a deep port. We see 2 Indian West Coast ports getting dredged and new ports coming in. Obviously, the port volumes are going to, capacities are going to get really, really upgraded. Now, if the economies of this part of the world doesn't go by double digits, I am economist by profession, I don't see numbers to fill up those capacities. Who's going to get hit? What have you got to do? What are we doing wrong? Can we get pushed like Hong Kong to number 11th position from number 1 or 2 when Chinese ports developed sometime back, 40 years back? What is your view, and what would you suggest to our policymakers to quickly do? Thank you, Prem.
I think that's a loaded question. While Prem gets his thought together, I just want to get the numbers clarified. So when we say India is 23 million, majority of it is domestic cargo. When we say 7 million in Port of Colombo, we are going to end up at 7.7 million. 80% or 85% is transshipment. So in terms of moves, we handle one container twice, and we say we've done 7 million or 7.7 million. So we need to be very clear about the numbers that we are talking about. I'm sure Prem was ready even before to answer those questions, but yeah.
Thank you for making it easy. I don't know whether she has made it easy for me, no? Right? Or made it more difficult. Ladies normally do the other way around, no? Made it more difficult for me to explain it. This question, you cannot answer statistically, actually. What she brought out was quite valid, and that will strengthen his argument. That is my worry. Because we are talking about a market size of 30 million in this entire region. India did, I think, in 2022, 20 million TEUs, when China did 269 million. So you look at the comparison. So many ports can survive in the wake of China's production because a huge volume. We are talking about a 30 million TEU volume, and many ports trying to survive handling it, right? So this is where I think I missed out one thing when I started talking about the changes that happened in hub port business. I missed out a key change, the change from hub and spoke to relay, right? This business changed from hub and spoke to relay, so much so ports like Singapore are major relay points than hubs, playing hub and spoke. Around 70% of what PTP, Singapore and Port Klang handles are relay cargo from China. This is what we don't do. We have a very tiny market, and defeating my own argument, we are strategically located. Embarrassing, isn't it? Not to be a hub for this region. We need to look at a broader market, right? There is a need for more locations to do this relay service. Since I worked 13 years as the ports regional manager for CMA CGM, I remember how we were looking for a location, alternative location to do our hubbing relay business. Right? When we selected Port Klang, West Port of Malaysia, and then West Port of Malaysia started growing in tandem with the port, we were quite happy as a shipping line. And then it came to a point where line needed to expand, and line needed to cut its costs and take some control of its destiny, like I said before. West ports were not willing to partner, so they were looking for alternative locations. Colombo was one of those locations that was considered, but unfortunately at that time, the South Port construction was still not on. Port was not ready for relay operation, so we lost. See, major hub ports do more relay than hub and spoke. So it's time for us to consider that new capacity coming up in port by launching 2 terminals within a matter of 2 years. This is an ideal opportunity for us to trade this to the major shipping lines, offer this as a relay point instead of depending on this tiny market. To elaborate what she said, now we have a 7 million TEU capacity we always boast about. Out of this 7 million TEU, sorry, not capacity, throughput, this 7 million TEUs, 6 million TEUs are transshipment. Out of 6 million TEUs, 73% are generated by Indian ports. So you're talking about 4.2 million, right? So each gateway move in and out of India becomes 2 throughput moves in Colombo. So you really have to do a comparison in terms of statistics. You have to divide this 4.2 by 2. So 2 million TEUs out of 20 million TEUs generated by Indian ports were handled in Colombo, 10%. Please remember, I saw another presenter making a huge mistake at a public presentation here saying that 24-25% of Indian cargo are handled in Colombo, which is not true. In terms of control over Indian cargo volumes, Colombo is on the mat. But unfortunately, we are so fragile, we can't even afford to fall from mat to the floor. We are too fragile. Right? So this is where we are, but we are not without opportunities. We have a great opportunity here to broad base our port. Since I am now involved in East African region with a major port operator, working on expansion of facilities and getting into the hinterland of landlocked countries, I see a vast potential for Colombo to become a hub to cater to East Africa. Why not? Right? This location is ideal for it. So let's not depend solely on India, and let's not worry about India building hub ports. This is bound to happen. They have to take control over their destiny. They would do it. Nobody can stop it. Right? Instead of hoping and praying that nobody should compete with us, we should find new business. This is my conclusion, That's what is called strategic thinking, right? Look at new markets, find ways of collaborating with lines, find out what the lines require, who requires a hub to which region. Key question, what that line requires from a hub port. If you answer these two, 5 million is not, TU capacity is not going to be sufficient in 2 years' time.
Great. Rohan, I hope...
I'm quite happy. I'd like to give the audience mic to anybody else who wants to ask. We have about 10 minutes in this session. Yeah. Let me do the service for you, sir.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael from Haley's Advantage. My question is to Mr. Prem. Actually, I have two other questions also, but first to you. Prem, this is on the IMO regulations, and there is a huge push towards decarbonization by 2050, and we see a number of ports in the European region and even some in Asia gearing towards supplying sustainable fuel to vessels. But I haven't seen anything from SLPA or the terminals here in preparation for sustainable fuels, or maybe I don't know about it. Who do you think should look at this in terms of policy? Is it the government or should the terminal operators do it? What do you think is the future? That's the question to you. Question to Bindu is in the next, let's say 10 years, with the refinery coming in from to Hambantota, where do you see the Hambantota port catering to? Would it be more of a kind of a bulk port looking at fuel operations, or would RoRo take the lead, or would it be container terminal operations?
I am not actually qualified to answer on behalf of SLPA, but as a person who was at SLPA and who is still involved in what's happening in Colombo, Colombo is making vast strides in terms of decarbonization. You see the two new terminals coming up, fairly green, right? Not totally green. To be totally green, this country has to produce green energy. The country is not producing green energy, so when we use green equipment here, the factories are emitting, carbon elsewhere to produce power for us. So port, I know, SLPA spearheaded this in 2021, designing ECT as the automated terminal with electrified equipment. Is going ahead. Then came the CWIT, WCT1 development. It's a fully electric terminal to the extent that it's transfer fleet, the trucks that will transfer boxes between the ship and the yard would be also electrically driven, to the extent that it can afford being electrified, because major fleet of users at the terminal are not terminal tractors or terminal equipment. The trucks that are used in interterminal transfers and export-import haulage, they are fossil fuel burners. So in two aspects, we have a long distance to walk. The country has to produce green fuel, and the port, I am sure, is going to be ready. And in terms of readiness for providing power to ships, because 45% of the emissions in ports are by ships that use their engines, the fossil fuel engines, during the stay, port stay. So new terminals are equipped. They are geared to provide shore power, provided the country can afford to supply that kind of power. So it is actually, again, we come back to the same issue, where the country has to produce green power and adequate power as well for the port to go forward with their plans to make it a green hub. So I'll pass this to Bindu.
Michael, it's like this. HIPG is promoted and formed as a multi-purpose port, and we are not just for container operation. So we do ro-ro, bulk, oil and gas, container, and of course we consider marine sector as well a key operation for us. And when it comes to containers, I'll quickly say that we will be with 1 million capacity from next year first quarter, and we hope to expand it to the 3 million capacity by year after. But we do not want to expand more than that. I think at this moment Colombo is expanding and capacity is sufficient. And if we also try to be big capacity, I think the entire country's container operation will suffer. So we will keep that. Maybe even the management will not go to the next phase if the demand is not coming up. But bunkering is, of course, one of the key areas we are targeting. And with the implementation of the what you call refinery in Hambantota, as the plans have been led, so I think the entire country's bunker suppliers can be happy, because then we will be having rather lower rates for the bunkers, so they can be competitive with the regional bunker suppliers. And of course we have identified the demand for LNG. I don't think methane will be considered this sooner, but LNG we have realized as a requirement. Especially most of the new building vessels are dual fuel, and demand is there for LNG. So we will have to cater them, and having that location, so we have to develop the bunkering sector. And I think the entire country's bunker suppliers would be happy for that matter, I think. So the other areas also will be considered, not only container. Container is a one phase only, and we know Colombo is the giant in this country, and we will also complement. Thank you.
Thank you. And we can take one more question.
I also have a question. I'm Daham from Haley's Advantage, and my question is also directed to Mr. Premachandra, and this is with regard to actually the Colombo North Port development. It's actually impressive kind of visionary growth plan. In terms of navigational point of view, is there any bottlenecks that you would see? If so, what would be your recommendations?
The ideal person to answer is in the audience. Our harbour master is there. I will request him to answer. I think he knows.
Thank you, sir. I think, I don't know, it's allowed to be answered by audience. Okay, I think it wouldn't have been directed at this panel, some other panel maybe. Anyway, now that it has come to me, yes, we did look at those numbers in the sense with all CNP 1, 2, 3 in place. We have done a simulation with a UK company, and we have found that it is possible to cater to what we are looking at with all those birds, that we can do the movements. Yes, good question. I think maybe many would have had that, so you cleared it for the audience, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe we can spare a few more minutes for Sali. I think you tried to ask a question, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. I think it's very interesting and a lot of stuff was talking. So now we were talking about Colombo losing its maybe the previously thought of market for hubbing. Hub and spoke we talked, and then we talked against hub and spoke, and we said probably relay is where we will get the bigger volumes. But having thought about East Africa, as Prem said, what about Colombo being a hub for the Gulf? I think it's always believed that Dubai and Abu Dhabi are building new ports and terminals, and they have big capacity. But if the main lines are going to go east-west, and Sri Lanka being and will have capacity, or will have to need the capacity, can we be a direct hub for the Gulf? That means we don't take it up to Dubai or Abu Dhabi, we take it straight through and turn around and be the hub port for that region. Because we are looking for new markets. I think there is enough services going Far East into Gulf and in from Europe into Gulf. That's all that is a traditional route. If we can be a hub, is there a possibility?
You want to take it, John?
Yes, both, yeah.
Yes.
I think it's potentially possible. I think I like your thinking. I think it depends really what the options are. I mean, Maersk today uses Salalah for that in Oman. I think if we had a way that we could do relay, you know, for big ships, depending on how the overall network was designed and whether you had enough massive cargo going up to the Gulf to make this the turning point versus one up north, could be. But I like the thinking, and I think I mean, for me the most important thing is that I love the way Prem kind of teed it up, that I mean, we're not competing among terminals in Colombo, right? I mean, we're competing among ports in the region, and I think it will take new thinking to make sure we're thinking differently and really coming up with good ideas for shipping lines as they consider the networks on how to deploy. And then I think it's going to take being super efficient and being super resilient, because if we do the build relay around this, there can be no hiccups or the whole network falls apart, right? So I think up to us to make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, I want to thank our esteemed panel. Thank you very much for that, your thoughts, input, the perspective, which I think opened up many ideas. I will now close the P1 because I think we are already 1 minute past. So thank you very much.